Hey folks, Rob with Two Guys in a Ride. Today, boy oh boy, do I have a treat for you. We're going to see several exhibits, but first let me tell you where we're at. We're at the Savoy Automobile Museum in beautiful Cartersville, Georgia, and with me I have Mary. Now tell me, one of the cool things about your museum is that if I come back in a month, it's not going to be the same? Not all of it?
Not all of it. We have 5 different galleries. One of them has just cars that the Savoy owns. Not our whole collection, just a small portion of it.
Okay.
The other 4 galleries are set up that one of those changes out every month.
Wow.
So you could come back, say, like every 3 months, and unless the Savoy gallery changes.
But you do change that occasionally. Those are cars you own, but you do still change those out.
A lot of times it's just one car, one or 2 cars, although last summer we took everything out and it was all convertibles with the tops down. And I'm hoping we'll do that again this summer.
That'd be perfect.
But I don't know if they're going to do that. But otherwise, you could come down, say, like every 3 months, and all of the rest of the building would be different.
So one location, but different every time you come back, practically. So, and folks, I really want you to check them out online and check out the rest of our videos. We're going to do a few of these, so make sure you watch those as well. So what do you say, Mary?
Let's do it.
Let's go for a ride.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so for all of us that remember what it was like to go cruising and playing the radio after high school at night in a small town, this is the '58 Chevy from American Graffiti. That was the theme of the movie. Francis Ford Coppola went to George Lucas, said, write a script that for the most part Americans will relate to. Lucas drew on his memories of growing up in a small town in California, where what you did is you cruised in your car at night, picking up girls, checking out who had what ride, and hanging out. And so for people that have seen the movie, it's the end of summer vacation. And this is Steve's car from 1958. But the interesting story is, how did Steve, or Ron Howard as we know him today, what was his evolution? Well, back in 1972 was a somewhat sort of popular TV show called Love American Style. And normally they had maybe 3 or 4 little vignettes that they would do. But on this one particular evening, they had one that was called The Cunningham's New Television. And Richie and Patsy, who ultimately wind up in Happy Days, they are the stars. The Cunninghams have bought a new television, and Richie and Patsy are figuring out how they're going to turn this into a chick magnet. Because, hey, they're the only people on the block that has the TV. Well, based off of that, the network did a pilot for Happy Days, but it never went anywhere. Now, Francis Ford Coppola is going to put together the movie. He has George Lucas write it. Somehow, George Lucas saw the pilot for Happy Days and saw Ron Howard, brought him in to be Steve in the movie. The movie was so successful that the network then spun off Happy Days, which of course became the big television hit with Fonzie and everybody else, which spurned off Laverne and Shirley. So it really got that nostalgia for that era. But this is the car from American Graffiti. That's the story of how Ron Howard got to be where he is now. Of course, he's behind the camera more than he is in the front anymore. But it's interesting, you know, a lot of child stars don't go anywhere. Of course, he was on the Andy Griffith Show, but he had a whole resurgence that came from the movie, which spawned the TV show. And it came out to a generation who could immediately respond to it. I mean, I watched it and I'm looking at that saying, I remember this, I remember that. I'm telling you how old I am. But then go back to the 58 Chevy.
Yeah.
This was, the Tri-5s came along, 55, 56, 57, wildly successful. Where do you go from there? And the 58 came out and it was sort of like, it lasted 1 year. And then of course 59, we had the cat's eyes, the bat wings. And yet now the 58 is a very collectible, very desirable car. But and it did sell well. It wasn't a total flop, but it never got the hype that the Tri-5s did.
Yep.
And even today, more people think about the Tri-5s than they would a 58.
I collected them.
And if you think, okay, the 57 Chevy had the big fin.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the other cars continued with the high fins. The 59 Cadillac, the pinnacle of
yes.
All of a sudden Chevy changes tactic and the fin is gone. Well, now it's going sideways, which was completely different, but it was a whole different look, a different design look. And so then that may have attributed to the 58. It was so different. It was like, what did they do? And yet it's a beautiful car. And when you look at it, now I'm a 55 Chevy person, that's my favorite, but I look at this and I think, what a beautiful car. And not the ridiculous fins, chrome over the top, the Harley Earl recipe of you can never have enough chrome.
Right, possible.
And yet now to stand back and look at it, beautiful classic styling.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful lines. It's a gorgeous car, but I think because coming off of the 57, it was so different that people had a tendency to look at it and go like, what happened? Now the 59 when it came out with the bat wings and the cat eye, very dramatic, but this was sort of like, it looks like, it was so different. They redesigned it and it was so different. Oh, and they had three engines. You had the 6-cylinder, you had two 8-cylinder engines. One of them was fuel injected. There were a lot of things to love about the car, a lot of options that they gave you. But again, you were coming right off of the Tri-5s. And I think that was such a hard act to follow. And maybe that was the reason why it got picked, because it wasn't really the loved car. And so here you are, kids in a small town. This is the best that you can afford, per se. So you don't have the real hot rod, hot car. You sort of have like the second best.
Which made the movie more relatable.
Yeah.
Because if they had had a top-notch Cadillac or Corvette or something, people would have been like, little rich kids, they wouldn't have done that.
Oh, you mean like the TV show Route 66? Two guys with no jobs driving around in a Cadillac. But that made a whole lot of sense. That was relatable. Hey, I watched it for the car. That's all I cared about.
There you go. And I've got to say, this isn't a replica.
This is the car. This is the real deal.